Welcome into the Boston Sports Summit. I am your host, Tim Barnett, and we got a big show for you tonight. It is the first show in a very long time where we're going to discuss all four teams. That's right. There's a lot going on. Obviously, the Patriots are now back atop the AFC East, and boy, does it just feel right. So we got that. We got Mike Vrabel's return to Tennessee. That's going to be a very interesting conversation, as well as the NFL trade rumors are really starting to heat up right now. The trade deadline is November 4th, but could we see some action? The Patriots certainly need to take advantage of that trade deadline if they want to do something, not only this season, but down the road. So then we are going to talk about the Red Sox. Alex Bregman has opted out. What does that mean? Where does that leave this team in terms of its roster construction? And just as a foreshadowing, not good. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. The Bruins got off to a really hot start, 3-0, and then killed themselves against Tampa Bay on Monday. And what basically happened was everything that we saw last year. And if they don't play better, we're going to be in for a very long season. As well as, to top it off, the Celtics just finished up their preseason. Now we have to wait an entire week for the Celtics to play game number 1, which is going to be next Wednesday. And so, but there were some interesting things that came out, including Jaylen Brown grabbing his hamstring, as well as what BetMGM and some other bookies have the Celtics win total this season. I'll tell you, you might want to go over with that one. So, getting back to the thing. Nice little word fumble there. Getting back to the swing of things, we have the New England Patriots taking down the New Orleans Saints on Sunday. And it was a game that I thought the Patriots were going to have going away. Like this felt like a no-brainer type of game, especially the way they came out. Yes, they let up the 53-yard bomb to Chris Olave, which I'll talk about that in a minute. But the offense looked a lot better today. You had the 53-yard bomb to Pop Douglas for the touchdown. You had the 61-yarder that, got overturned because the refs can't do their job. Well, needless to say, I predicted, like I said, this game being an absolute no-brainer, 31-10 New England. It turned out it was a heck of a lot closer, being 25-19. But there were some good things, and then, of course, there were some not-so-good things. And that's kind of how I want to kick this off. I want to kick it off with our game day grades, starting off with the letter A. Of course, I got these three: Drake May, Kayshon Boutte, and Marcus Jones. The three of them were outstanding. Drake May, for instance, I mean, what do I got to say? I mean, are we talking about Drake May VP? Because, hey, I think the way he has come out of the gate, after the first week, maybe two, well, actually, no, after week 1, basically since week 2 against the Dolphins, Drake May has been absolutely lights out. He has been the reason why the Patriots are sitting where they are, right? The reason why we beat Buffalo. I was saying here, we have to run the ball against Buffalo. Their defense, is good against the pass, but it sucked against the run. And then what happens? We can't run worth a damn, and Drake May is picking his spots wherever he wants. It's like bang, bang, bang. Like he's pinpointed the ball, precision. Drake May won us the game in Buffalo, and Drake May kind of won us the game here. When you look at the box score, Drake May, 18 of 26, 261 yards, 3 touchdowns, and only took 1 sack. He had a 140.1 quarterback rating and a 92.6 QBR. I mean, Drake May has not only just taking that second-year leap, but his second-year leap is the stuff of, dare I say, legends. Like, it is just unbelievable what he has done. And even some of his throws that, of course, were overturned because the refs absolutely sucked. And did they suck all weekend or what? It was a total joke when it comes to refereeing. But Drake May absolutely deserves an A, as well as Kayshon Boutte. I mean, Kayshon Boutte, 5 receptions, 93 yards, 2 touchdowns, and the 29-yard catch for the touchdown was his longest of the day. Not to mention the game-sealing catch where he's on the sideline, he's getting mauled, he goes up, makes the catch, and comes down and is able to not only keep his feet in bounds, but get his knee down to keep the clock running at 2:33. The Saints had no timeouts, so at 2:33, they had no choice but, and then, of course, Vrabel heads up play, challenge it. We'll talk about that in a minute. But Kayshon Boutte, just absolutely clutch, playing in his home state. It was just, it was fun to watch, needless to say. And then, of course, Marcus Jones. He has been absolutely lights out as a defender. Marcus Jones has been lights out. He listed at 5'8", took on Olave, who's listed at 6 feet, multiple times, and came up big. He was right in the face of these guys and was just able to disrupt the receivers and their routes. And what he showed to me was a maturity that I haven't seen from him ever. Now, I'm talking about prior to this year, but still, he's been unbelievable. Unbelievable. And him on the punt return, him as a nickel corner. I mean, there's not much more I can say. When you're going up against Gonzalez, Davis, and Jones, good luck. So, all 3 of those guys can cover. There's no 2 ways about it. So, all of them deserve A's in my book for that game. Then moving on to B's, you had the good games. Pop Douglas, Christian Ellis, and John Stryker. John Stryker, for those who don't know, nicknamed Stretch by Mike Vrabel, he's kind of the Ernie Adams to Mike Vrabel, the guy who's telling Vrabel to, hey, challenge that or don't challenge that, like kind of giving those clues and hints, right? But starting at the top, Pop Douglas, 53-yard touchdown, another massive touchdown. If it wasn't for that BS call on Stephon Diggs, it's a situation where I'm just sitting there going, what are we doing as referees? Like, honestly, and you have people who I've heard this before want to say, hey, don't throw the flag there because you want to reward the big play. And while I understand that sentiment, I do disagree with it from the sheer standpoint of if it's absolutely egregious, if, there's a massive hold or if there is blatant pass interference, offensive or defensive, certain things of that nature, then yeah, I would argue, you make the call. You make the right call. But what they did with Stephon Diggs in that second Pop Douglas touchdown, which did end up turning into a touchdown to Kayshon Boutte anyway, it just sucks. It takes the wind out of your sails. And even as a fan, you're sitting there screaming at the TV, going, you called a penalty for that? And don't worry, I'll get into it a little bit more, but it was crazy. And Pop Douglas, to his credit, still had a 3 catch on 4 targets, 71-yard day, and 1 touchdown. So 53 yards out of his 71. he would have absolutely cracked 100 had that second one count, because that was over 60 yards. But still, a very good day from Pop Douglas. Christian Ellis now is a guy I've kind of been getting on a lot, being slow, not being able to make the tackles that he needs to, getting run through, getting run by, all those things, right? Christian Ellis came up huge today. Not only did he have that deflection against that would have been a catch across the middle on Rashid Shaheed with less than 5 minutes left in the third quarter, he was reading Rattler the entire time, and he was able to make a diving pass breakup, which was clutch. On top of the fact that his forced fumble on Juwan Johnson flipped everything on its head, because even though the Saints weren't necessarily great at running the football against us, 23 attempts on 73 yards, or 23 rushes for 73 yards. It's not like it was a great game for them rushing, but they were moving the ball at will. I mean, they even said in the game that Chris Olave went to Spencer Rattler and is like, all day. And they took advantage of it. Chris Olave was targeted friggin' 10 times. 10 times he's targeted. Like, that just means he had an edge. And granted, that edge was going against Carlton Davis, who I'll talk about in a minute, but also Marcus Jones. And Marcus Jones actually stood tall going against Olave. But Ellis, meanwhile, really disrupted their offense by forcing that fumble right at midfield. If it wasn't for Ellis's fumble, and the referees did get that right, so the refs sucked, but they didn't suck enough to say that wasn't a fumble, because that was clear as day. Ball was loose in and around his gut. It was hard to see the ball, but it was. You weren't going to change that. You weren't going to say that he still had possession. You couldn't. And so the referees or New York made the right call by ruling that Juwan Johnson fumble a fumble. So Christian Ellis came out huge, and then John Stryker. I gave him a B because of the challenges. He was very smart. There was a point earlier in the game where even the broadcast crew was saying Vrabel should challenge that. Vrabel and the Pats should challenge that. They should challenge that, and they didn't. Now, would it have been successful by the announcers' recollection or the way they were interpreting the rules? And the Patriots would have won that challenge. But you have two challenges. Had we had, just by sheer circumstance, challenged that play earlier in the game, and we lost somehow, even though everybody and their mothers like the Patriots should, because the Patriots would have won that challenge. Had we lost it by whatever, that means we would have only had one challenge. And that challenge would have come on either the Juwan Johnson fumble or the Kayshon Boutte catch at the end of the game. Now, I would have preferred it to be on the Johnson fumble, but the Kayshon Boutte catch is definitely a situation where it sealed up the game for New England. It didn't win them the game. It sealed the deal, because he makes the catch. He's in bounds. The clock should have still been running at 2 minutes and 33 seconds. When they overturned it and made the right call that he caught it inbounds, he was down inbounds, and the clock is running, the Patriots let it run to the 2-minute warning, and then they did 3 kneel downs, and that was the ball game. Whereas 2:33, New Orleans still has no timeouts, and the clock is stopped. That means New England is going to have to, essentially, if they want to take a kneel down, get a first down. Now, the way they're going to do it is probably run the ball. So they're going to run it on first down, which is they're going to take them to the 2-minute warning. They're going to run it on second down, which is going to take them to about, somewhere between $1.10 and $1.15. Let's say the play takes 5 seconds off the clock running the football. All right, so that's $1.55. You subtract 40 seconds, you get down to $1.15. All right, and then you snap it again at somewhere between $1.15 and $1.20, and then another, 5 seconds. Let's say you snap it at 118, you get it to 113. You do more math on that, blah, 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 blah. I'm friggin' doing numbers in my head as I go. This sucks. It's not what I signed up to do. So, basically, the Patriots, had they not gotten a first down, would have had to punt around 20 to 30 seconds. And then we would have had to play defense. Now, everyone wants to say, New England would have came up. New England would have stopped him. Do you really think Spencer Rattler couldn't? And it's like, I agree. I agree that I don't believe Rattler and the Saints would have been able to drive the length of the field to then score a touchdown and then kick the extra point for the win. I don't believe that. But at the same time, I would rather do everything in my ability to make sure that doesn't have to happen. So leaving that first challenge and using that first challenge on the Juwan Johnson fumble, then using the second challenge on Kayshon Boutte staying in bounds. Big time moves by John Stryker. Big time. Absolutely big time. You love to see it. And so then going on to average days. I gave this to Carlton Davis and Kyle Duggar. Now, Kyle Duggar, start with him. He finished with 3 total tackles and 1 solo tackle. But we came on a corner blitz on the first play of the game with Carlton Davis coming off the edge, and he was telegraphing that the entire way, by the way. You watch the replays, and he's like ready to go, right? He makes a jump and then has to come back and then goes on the snap. But Kyle Duggar is on Olave. Like that's his man now. Coming down from the safety position. First of all, I understand Jalen Hawkins is hurt. But why are we having Kyle Duggar as our free safety who is playing the pass like that? That is absolutely asinine because he starts to come down and it just so happens that Olave is on just a straight go, and 15 yards into it, Olave is bye-bye, gone. Right down the sideline, Rattler just stared him down and it was over. Now, granted, Duggar was able to make the comeback and make the tackle, but it was just stupid. It was a stupid play call. And if you're going to have anybody come on a corner blitz, you're not having Kyle Duggar as the safety to then swap and be the coverage guy. You can't, especially on a wide receiver of Chris Olave's caliber. You can't do that. So that's where I have a problem with the scheme. Because that's just, you clearly don't know Kyle Duggar if you think he can be the man to cover for you when you're sending Carlton Davis on a corner blitz. He can't. That's not what he's capable of doing. If anything, he's a Marte Mapu type of guy where, yeah, he's listed as a safety, but he plays more in the box. He's more of a better run defender than he will ever be as a coverage guy, which is why I was more shocked because at least that he wasn't the one we cut, but it was Peppers the one we cut, even though as much as Peppers is still kind of the same guy, he's better in coverage than Duggar. So that's why I kind of gave him a C. Because that was really the one bad play on Doug's resume yesterday. Or yesterday. Yesterday was Wednesday. Sunday. But it was, you can't do that. You have to know your players and you have to know what their strengths and weaknesses are. And clearly, Kyle Duggar's weakness is coverage. Don't give it to him. Don't let him do it. And then Carlton Davis. He also was okay. Because while he played most of the game fine, he gave up 2 big pass plays and had another penalty go against him. Rashid Shaheed burned him early in the game. Like, it was Carlton Davis's feet were caught in cement, and Shaheed is just like, okay, peace. Just quick slant, quick hand jab, and boom, was taken off and gained 17 yards off it. And Carlton Davis, it almost felt like it took him a full second and a half to realize, oh, wait, Shaheed's over there now. I got to move. And then he did. And then the penalty on Carlton Davis, defensive holding on a deep ball to Olave that went through his hands. It's a 25-16 game. And luckily for Carlton Davis, they called it a defensive holding, not a pass interference. But you remember that ball that was down the right sideline for Olave? He kind of lays out like this and the ball goes right through his hands. One of those, you think yourself, you kind of should have had it, but glad you didn't. That was the play that Carlton Davis got the holding call for. And it's only 5 yards, but it's an automatic first. That is one of those plays you can't – it was just bad. And granted, he probably got beat. That's why there was that hole. But, again, Carlton Davis is going to be the guy they pick on. And because you got Gonzalez on the other side, you got Marcus Jones now on the inside. Who are they going to target? They're either going to target the tight ends and the linebacker, who's going to be on the linebackers, or you're going to target Carlton Davis. And the $20 million man is getting targeted. I don't blame teams for trying, and they're winning. They're winning on a halfway decent clip. Now, Davis does have his moments where he's locked down, tightened coverage. He's good, but there are also plenty of times where he does stuff like the Shaheed, where it's his feet are caught in cement and he's just the guy is right by him. So those are the guys that I thought had average games, and then groups and guys that just not good. The running back group and Garrett Bradbury. Now, Garrett Bradbury had the botched snap on the 4th down. Let's just start there. Okay, that botched snap was, one of those situations where you can't have that happen. And obviously, when you're dealing with that, you're probably thinking a lot in your head. He wasn't having a great day dealing with the Saints D line, and so because of that, I think he was trying to, hike it and try to get up as quick as he could. But of course, that hike came at the expense of the snap. That's why it blew right by Drake May, and he just had to fall on it. Now, again, it's all interpretation, basically. I don't know what's going in Garrett Bradbury's head. But he did have a tough day against the Saints D-line, especially on the run game, which is part of the reason why the running back group is a part of this. Because, while Garrett Bradbury had a tough day, handling Devon Godshaw, who, former Patriot Devon Godshaw, there was also the O-line couldn't get a push. And so the running backs suffered, and they suffered tremendously. 31 rush attempts for 73 yards. That's including Drake May running, by the way. So, it's one of those, it's they sucked. And when you look at it, all right, they rushed for 45 yards on 22 carries as the running back group. Okay, the running backs themselves, Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson. 22 rushes for 45 yards. Trash. Garbage. And that's why Drake May has been lighting it up, because he's had no choice. You know, he's had to light it up. He's had to be the guy to carry this offense and carry this team. And I feel a lot more comfortable now with Drake May as our quarterback, being able to have him step back and throw it 40 times a game than I did 6 weeks ago. But if this team is going to be successful, they need to run the football. Now, of course, it's hard without Antonio Gibson as a third running back in that group. You know, but he needs to come. Not he needs to come back. We need to get another running back. We just do. And I'll talk about that when we get to the trade rumors coming up in just a little bit. But there's a lot wrong with this group right now. And that it doesn't help that the offensive line is not giving them the holes and the push that they need. You know, you had in this game, you had Ramondre Stevenson on the 1-yard line. In an I formation, they actually had a fullback in, and he still gets a 3-yard loss. Ramondre Stevenson still gets a 3-yard loss, even though he's got a blocker in front of him and his offensive line. So, if this team is going to be the 10-11 win bare minimum team that I know a lot of you believe that this team can be, they need to run the ball. They need to have a balanced offense for this to work. And running at 2 yards a clip is not going to do it for you. You know, they're barely running. In this game, they barely ran for over 2 yards a carry. That's not what you want if you're going to be a successful team. So that's basically it for the grades, except for the fact in terms of like the Patriots. But if we're still talking about the grades, the other one, the final one, are the referees who get a massive, massive F in this game. Just absolutely atrocious. I already mentioned the second Pop Douglas touchdown in which Stephon Diggs was flagged for illegal contact downfield. And if you look at it, this is it. He gets off the line. He's trying to make a move, but they're calling him illegal contact. Like, what are we doing? Like, that was just a terrible call, I think, on the part of the referees. And it just so ticky-tack. That's what bothers me. It's so ticky-tack, so useless. And that is a play right there where, yeah, you know what? Reward the big play. Reward it, because there was no need. You had guys, special teams, running out onto the field before they called that penalty. So you have that. Not to mention, later on, Stephon Diggs being called for an OPI for sticking his hand on the shoulder pad of his defender. Look at this. He sticks it on. He's not pushing. If anything, you could argue he's guiding, but there's no push. And then he comes up with a massive third down catch on the sideline. Unbelievable catch. But they're saying that that was a push-off? In what world? In what world was that a push-off? And then, the very next play, you have Matt Collins going down the same sideline who is trying to make a catch that is in which the defender now is committing a DPI because he clearly is grabbing his left bicep and pulling it down, which, take a look. I mean, Drake May throws the ball down the deep sideline at the 40, and it's just out of the reach of Matt Collins. But then when you slow it down, look at this. Clearly pulling on the left bicep on the left arm, which Matt Collins then has to adjust. What are we talking about? And the referees don't have to explain themselves to the media. They don't have to go and sit in front of a media to explain the fact that, yeah, we missed that call, we missed that call, we missed that call, I didn't see it, or I missed it, or it was too fast. The referees are awful. Absolutely awful. And it sucks that they're part-timers. It sucks that this isn't their full-time gig, which it should be their full-time gig, and they should be being trained on a year-round basis. They should be hopping from games to games, trying to stay in tune with everything that's going on. Because how do you miss that? How do you make those first two calls, and then how do you miss that DPI? Now, luckily for us, we came away with the victory. But if we didn't, could you imagine what this show would sound like if we lost to the lowly Saints and those three calls were upheld, or the exact same way? That's what's ridiculous. And that's why you have situations like you do in Detroit and Kansas City. That Sunday night game. Jared Goff, sure, made an illegal motion on his touchdown, but when they reviewed the touchdown, they then threw the flag afterwards, creating the illegal motion penalty that wasn't there, and you're not supposed to do. The only reason why you're reviewing the touchdown is to review, did Jared Goff cross the goal line, and did he have possession of the ball? Both of those are resounding yes. Great. Point after attempt, let's go. But no, they had to change it. And this is the stuff that, talking with the Grid group chat, that sometimes, it's interesting because I'll admit when I'm texting or when I'm, tweeting and people want to argue with me, I'm one of those guys who I'll start it, but then I'll just die off like real quick because it feels kind of useless to sit there and text and go back and forth with an argument and all. But I'm looking at that play going, this is the type of stuff where you see, in Kansas City's case, you sit there and see that and you're like, of course, for Kansas City, like it's absurd. It's ridiculous. They took points off the board for Detroit in that case. I'm not saying Detroit would have went on to win the game, but I am saying that Detroit scoring that touchdown and the refs calling it the way they should have instead of changing the rules. And then Dan Campbell alluded to the fact that he was told the referees, were given the word from New York to then throw the flag. Alluded to it, allegedly. But it's, that game could have been very different had Detroit got that first touchdown. But no, they didn't. And so that's kind of the stuff that you see. And unless you're curb stomping Kansas City like Philadelphia did in the Super Bowl, the referees are going to get involved when it comes to the Chiefs. And that's just my soap opera for the Chiefs. But it just goes to the fact that the referees suck and need to be held accountable. And the shitty part is, excuse my French, the tough part is them being held accountable is not working in the postseason, is not, all these things where, no, you should be fired and you should be held accountable. Why is it on the head coach or the players who have to deal with the backlash for losing a game that was ultimately decided by referees? That's the issue that I have. It's that these guys are there to police the game and make sure things don't get out of hand, and that, we're not talking about any clotheslines or, fights or anything crazy, tripping, kicking, all that stuff. But yet they dictate so many games that then end up falling on the shoulders of the head coach, that end up falling on the shoulders of the players. And so there are players where we might call not a big-time guy, but he could have been, had the referee made one or two calls differently in these games, because the momentum and the flow of the game would have been very different. And that's the thing. And just to add another layer to this, that's another thing the analytics guys don't understand is flow, is momentum. You're telling me that game would have been the exact same game had Detroit scored that first touchdown and Jared Goff gotten it, versus that stupid illegal motion, which, again, if you want to say it's the right call, fine, it's the right call. But they didn't call it. They got the word from New York to then call it, which they shouldn't have done. And that's the whole point. Analytics, numbers, as I say on this show every single week, for the most part, they don't show the entirety of the game. And they never will. And that's the problem when you're watching these games and you're like, Detroit had great momentum and then they got screwed. And then their mind shifts. And shame on Detroit for allowing that to dictate the rest of their play. But still, the referees across the entire league need to be held accountable. They need to be held a hell of a lot more accountable and held to a higher standard than just simply, oh, well, you had all these plays and you know what? You're not going to work the playoffs. Oh, but here's a great new contract. What? No, absolutely not. These guys absolutely need to face the media, and the players and coaches should absolutely be able to say anything when it comes to the referees. The referees are basically like, the vaccine creators. They can create all these vaccines, but not be held personally or not be held liable if anything were to happen. Make that make sense. Referees are the same way. They can make all these calls. They can dictate the flow and momentum of games, but they can't be held accountable. Screw that. Like that's absurd. That's absurd. Wow. Referees. Yeah, it'll get you going. It'll absolutely get you going. But the best part is we get to talk about now Mike Vrabel's revenge game when it comes to the Tennessee Titans and returning to Nashville to take on his former team. And the funny part is Tennessee is an absolute dumpster fire. They are just god-awful. Cam Ward had a great season in Miami, earned the number 1 overall pick, and has absolutely not lived up to the hype right now. And yes, his team sucks. So that's kind of part of it. But when we're talking about Mike Vrabel returning, he was the head coach there from 2018 to 2023. He reached the AFC Championship game in 2019 with Ryan Tannehill and Derrick Henry. In 2021, won Coach of the Year going 12-5. And then that NFL draft, that following NFL draft, that is when everything just went haywire. They traded A.J. Brown and then proceeded to draft Arkansas running back Treylon Burks in the first round. Arkansas wide receiver Treylon Burks. Excuse me, I don't know why running back was on my mind. And the team sucked. You know, Treylon Burks was not anywhere close to a competent receiver, let alone a first-round draft pick. And from there, the Titans went 7-10 that following season, and then 6-11 in 2023. And after that season, that's when Mike Vrabel subsequently got fired from the Titans. Excuse me for a second. So Mike Vrabel gets fired after the 23 season, and Derrick Henry was shocked. Taylor Lewan, who was in the media during this time, was shocked. But Derrick Henry went on to say, quote, wow, I'm shocked. Coach Vrabel is a leader of men. He is a great coach and teacher. I know he will get another opportunity right away. I look forward to it, end quote. Taylor Lewan, former left tackle for the Titans, found out during his appearance on Rich Eisen, where Taylor Lewan was now in the media doing Bussin' with the Boys podcast. And Taylor Lewan wholeheartedly believed that the last two losing seasons were due to the extreme lack of talent on the roster and not Mike Vrabel. And I don't disagree with him. Ryan Tannehill, Derrick Henry, Derrick Henry's great. He was probably the only talented guy on the roster during that time, especially when you trade A.J. Brown. But owner Amy Adams Strunk, when she took over for her late father, Bud Adams, and she got controlling share in 2015. Currently, as an owner, her record is 76-78, with her first two seasons with Mike Malachy, who she fired after back-to-back 9-7 seasons, to then bring in Mike Vrabel. Then she fires Vrabel after two poor seasons in 22 and 23, bringing in Brian Callahan, who just got fired after a season and a third with the Titans. It's stuff like that is crazy, right? You're sitting there going, you want to know why you suck? You want to know why you're a friggin' dumpster fire of an organization? Is because you're pulling moves like this. You're bringing in a guy and you let him coach for a season and a third? How is that going to make your team any better? How are you building a culture off of that? And luckily for her, the only reason why they got one victory was because Amari DiMercato, the running back for the Cardinals, drops the football right before the goal line. And then Tennessee completes the comeback. Had he not dropped that football, Tennessee would be 0-6 at this point. But Sports Illustrated's Bert Breer had a couple interesting quotes when talking about Amy Adams Strunk. He said, quote, one thing that's common with every one of these moves, from the coaching fires, the general manager fires, that she's the guys that she's fired, so quote, quote, One thing that's common with every one of these moves is Amy doesn't like being embarrassed. She had a huge family contingent at that game in Vegas, end quote, which, it just happened. And that's why it's probably part of the reason why she fired Brian Callahan. He goes on to say, quote, I don't think it's a coincidence that she needs her pound of flesh after they have the worst record in the league last season, end quote. Breer added, quote, it's just all of these different moves seem to depend on A, her own personal emotions, and B, whoever the last person she listened to is. Say what you want about Robert Kraft and John Henry and basically every owner here in Boston who bashed time and time again. The one thing I will absolutely give them credit for is the fact that they do not base decisions on emotions. Now, sometimes you absolutely should when the emotions are good and you're feeling great about the team, you're feeling great about your organization, and you should go for it. You should spend the money, John. But Amy Adams Strunk seems to be all up in her emotions, all up in her feels. And when the team sucks, that's what's going to dictate her situation. And that's why she fired Mike Vrabel. That's why she fired Brian Callahan. And even today, you got Burt Breer talking about how Amy Adams Strunk, sorry, it wasn't Burt Breer. It was, I'm just going to leave that story. I'm going to let that story lie because I can't remember the source right now. But Burt Breer, in the same article or podcast, follows it up with, quote, based on where things were and based on how things have gone over the last few years in that organization and based on how the team looked, I don't think anybody was blown away because I think Amy's now got a reputation of being an unpredictable owner capable of these sorts of things. She fires Brian Callahan after a season in the third where she is now about to face Mike Vrabel, right? She's now about to face Mike Vrabel. She fires Brian Callahan, and she's about to face Mike Vrabel, as I keep saying. But part of the reason, and my thought initially, and clearly a lot of other people have thought this too, was the fact that is she trying to get that interim coach bump, right? The coach, the interim coach who comes in, is a rah-rah guy, and somehow the players fight for him the first couple of games, and then all of a sudden they suck. They go back to being what they were. Because going against Mike Vrabel, she knows he's got that, I don't want to say pettiness, but he's not foolish. He knows exactly what he's about to do. And going into this game, Mike Vrabel wants to win this. Now, if you listen to him in his press conferences, of course, he's going to say, this isn't a win-1 for the Gipper. I'm not playing that card with these guys. We just want to go out, play a good football game, and get the win. He's going to play it right down the middle. But when you look at what happened now 2 weeks ago in Buffalo, you'd think that the team wasn't rallying around Stephon Diggs for that game. Of course they were. You don't think that this team is looking at this situation and doesn't know that, hey, Mike Vrabel used to coach here. He got kicked out unceremoniously when no one was expecting it. Yeah, they had 2 bad seasons, but they were 7-10 and 6-11. It wasn't like they were the worst team in football. So I think this team is going to come in hot in terms of the Patriots. I think that interim bump from the coach is not going to apply here. And also, too, just mentioning earlier, Amy Adams Strunk being a unpredictable owner. Yeah, she fired John Robinson 2 days after the Titans played A.J. Brown and the Eagles when A.J. Brown went off. She didn't wait for the end of the year. She fired him mid-season. Well, later in the season. It was in December. But it just so happened to be 2 days after the guy that John Robinson traded, A.J. Brown, torched their ass. And then she also fired Rand Cawthorn just 2 seasons. Vrabel's last season and Callahan's first. A general manager having 2 seasons is going to do nothing for you. Nothing. You're not going to build anything with that team. You know, like that's part of being a general manager is you're given time. You're given 3-4 years minimum to build your team and get your guys. This league is not a league of, hey, we're going to trade these guys, these prospects for your player or a couple players. And it's not a big trading league. But this situation, she fired a guy 2 days after the guy, A.J. Brown, torched the Titans and him, and then hires a GM just to fire him after 2 seasons. Why would anyone want to work for her? This is insane. Like, this is not a stable move from an owner. Or this is not a move from a stable owner. Hence, quote, being unpredictable, end quote. So this is going to be a really fun matchup for Vrabel and the Patriots because even when you look at the position comparisons, it's not even a question when you're looking at the talent. And do they have talent? Yes, they do. The Titans absolutely have some good talent. Arden Key being one of them. Arden Key's one of them. Roger McCreary, is another one. You know, several guys, especially on the defensive side, who are very good. Tony Pollard is fine. Calvin Ridley, I was glad we didn't get Calvin Ridley because he really hasn't done much in Tennessee. Granted, look what you've given him as a quarterback. I get it. But even still, I don't think Calvin Ridley is the Calvin Ridley of the Falcons. I don't. So it's really no question. I mean, for the only reason why I gave the edge to them at running back is because as much as I don't believe that Tony Pollard is, as good as the rest of the league, he might be better than us because Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears are good backs. But when you look at Ramondre and Travion Henderson, out of 51 graded running backs off of Pro Football Focus, and say what you want about Pro Football Focus, but I actually agree with this because out of the 51 running backs graded, Ramondre Stevenson and Travion Henderson are 49th and 50th, respectively, on that list in terms of overall grade. So that's where I give the edge to Tennessee. Now, down the road, could those two be better? Absolutely. And probably, maybe even this game, they could find the switch and bam, they're back to it and they're rolling. Ramondre and Travion Henderson finally feels comfortable and finds his form. But as it currently stands, as I said, last week, the Patriots had 22 rush attempts for 45 yards. Just barely over 2 yards a carry. At this point, yeah, I'm taking Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. Everybody else, though, even though their DBs, Amani Hooker, L'Jarius Sneed, Roger McCreary, Arden Key, they got some good pieces. But I do believe that we are much better as a whole in all of these positions. So when looking at that, and then too, looking at the special teams, I gave us the special teams credit because even though, yeah, they have Johnny Hecker, and if you don't remember, Johnny Hecker was the guy that Bill Belichick, the punter, that Belichick was crushing over big time before Super Bowl 53 against the Rams. He's older, and Joey Sly is questionable for the game, but has been okay. 13 of 17 for field goals, 4 of 5 for extra points. I mean, give us our special teams. That's really a no-brainer. And then, of course, I'm just doing it because I do it on a weekly basis. But looking at the QB comparison, it's really no joke and no comparison here. Drake May and Cam Ward, 6 games each. Drake May, 1,522 yards to Cam Ward's 1,101. Drake May's completion percentage, 73.2%. Cam Ward, 55%. Drake May's touchdown to interception ratio after his 3-touchdown day on Sunday, he's now got 10 TDs to 2 picks. Cam Ward's got 3 touchdowns to 4 picks. Drake May's got a passer rating of 112.5, and Cam Ward's got a passer rating of 67.3. Drake May's got a QBR of 57.7, whereas Cam Ward's got a QBR of 19.8. This should not be a game. When you look at the Patriots offense versus the Titans defense, the Patriots offense in pass yards per game, 244.5, which is 6th best in the NFL. The Titans defense in terms of pass yards allowed per game is 13th best at 209.7. Then Patriots rush yards per game is 91.5, which again, I've stated is 26th. It's not good. But the Titans defense in terms of rush yards allowed per game is 25th best at allowing 133.7 yards per rushing yards per game. And then in terms of points per game, the Patriots scored 25 even points per game, which is 11th best in the NFL, whereas the Titans allowed 26.8 points per game, which ranks 26th in the NFL. Patriots defense versus the Titans offense. The Titans passing yards per game is 31st in the NFL at 150.5, whereas the Patriots rank 25th, allowing 239 pass yards per game. The Titans rank 31st in rush yards per game at 81.8, but the Patriots are 4th in the NFL, allowing only 83.5 rush yards per game. And then in terms of points per game, the Titans are 31st in scoring at 13.8 points per game, whereas the Patriots are tied for 7th, top 10 in points allowed per game at 20 even. Is this a contest, guys? Comment down below. You know, that's something I really want to know. But when I'm making my prediction for this game, it should not be a contest. That interim coach bump is a joke because I got the Patriots winning 42-10 on Sunday. This should not be a game. There should be the closest that they should come in this game is if Tennessee gets the ball first and gets 3 points. That's it. That should be the only lead the Titans have in this game, if any. The Patriots defense should be able to step on their throats, and Drake May should be able to move the ball with ease, and Travion Henderson and Ramondre Stevenson should be running all over them, just like the Nick Chubb and Sony Michel days at University of Georgia. That is how this game should go. Absolutely no question. Now, that's my preview for the Patriots. The next thing I do want to get to, which before I get to it, I do want to check out some comments here. NJ Flip says, if somehow the Patriots finesse the Eagles or Saints for Kamara / A.J. Brown without giving up too much money. All right, we'll talk about that in a minute. But at frequent comments, not Doug, it's a trap. I don't blame you. I mean, this has all the makings of a trap game for the Patriots. But I can't see it. I just truly cannot see it. And I understand any given Sunday. But if I'm looking at things, it just Cam Ward is still not adjusted to the NFL. You get Calvin Ridley is really your only good receiver, but he's not. He's older. Tony Pollard is fine. It's just this team, and now they just fired their coach, and after a season and a third, like, what do you expect? And you got Mike McCoy. Like, what? It's no Dan Campbell. No Mike Vrabel. So, I don't know. It's really interesting. Like, I can't physically see the trap game. I just can't. I mean, I can see that it is or could be a trap game, but them playing down to that level, that I can't see. So the last thing I want to talk about when it comes to the Patriots is the fact that the trade deadline is coming up. It's coming up November 4th, which is a Saturday. Excuse me. Nope, I'm still in September. I keep forgetting that. Let's see. 1, 2, 3. Okay. Yep. I'm right. It was a Tuesday. Easy. Tuesday at 4 p.m., November 4th is the trade deadline. Now, one of the big questions is, what do the Pats need most? And I think the answer to that is simple. Everything. The Patriots, outside of quarterback, need help everywhere. I don't know what team in the NFL right now that doesn't need help everywhere. The benefit is the Patriots do have the most salary cap at 54.6, courtesy of over the cap. But the reality, I think, in terms of what the Patriots need, is they need an edge rush, a running back, and some DBs, preferably safety, and maybe even a corner too. Because with those three positions, we obviously need a running back due to the fact that Antonio Gibson is done for the year. No two ways about that. We need an edge rush because Keon White not only is injured, but even when he was in the game has been a no-show. He really hasn't gone after the quarterback like I hoped he would or thought he would. So edge rushing is absolutely a thing I need. We need a guy who can get after the quarterback on a consistent basis and isn't afraid to push the boundaries like that. And then we also need a defensive back, whether it be a corner or safety or both, because cornerback, Carlton Davis went down in this game. Marcus Jones went down in this game. Both of which return to the field, which is great. But you got Christian Gonzalez, who waited 4 weeks, 5 weeks, before he finally returned to action, 4 weeks, before he finally returned to action to play. And then Davis, who's been known to miss time, at certain points during the season, what are we going to do without if he goes down? And then Marcus Jones, he's great. He's shifty. But he's small. If we put him on offense for a play or two and he gets tackled the wrong way, if on a punt return, God forbid, something happens, if like all these things, we need to be prepared for that. On top of the fact that Jalen Hawkins is hurt, Kyle Duggar kind of sucks, especially for the contract that Elliott Wolf gave him last year. Thanks, Elliott. That's why I want a free range safety if we can find one, if we can get one. But then I want to look at this and say, okay, what's our goal for this trade deadline? Is our goal an immediate based impact? A guy that we can bring in today who will not be with us for much longer, but can help us out now. Is that the kind of guy we should be looking for? Or are we looking to improve now, but also keep that player for down the road in the future? Have him play here for a number of years and hopefully build with this team. Now, of course, ideally, you want option B. Who doesn't? Guy can help you now, but might improve as the years go on. Option A is fine, but you might get option A on a cheaper deal in terms of working with a trade partner. If you try to do option B, where you want a guy who's going to help, but might be better a year, 2 years, 3 years from now, and he's still with you, he's signed the deal, signed the dotted line, you might be paying through the nose for that, which could come at first, second, third round pick, depending on the age, the health, all of that. But I also wouldn't mind, of course, a wide receiver. Yeah, and when looking at wide receivers, you got Chris Olave, who we just saw, who's very good, except for the fact that he's got concussion history. One wrong move from him and lights out at 26 years old. You got A.J. Brown, who has been rumored to be on his way out of Philadelphia, but I don't think Philadelphia is going to want to let him go. And if they do, again, you're paying through the nose for that. Jacoby Myers is a very solid receiver, and I like Jacoby, but I'm kind of done with him. I wanted him back when he was a free agent, but of course, Bill cheaped out, and he's asked for a trade during training camp this season. So is that really, out of the question? I don't think so. But then I also saw that DeAndre Hopkins is an option, which, no, I'm done. I'm out on D-Hop. No, thank you. I'm good. Now, as for running backs, the position of actual need, I think the top guy we should get, or in could is a very strong word in this point, is Breece Hall, the Jets running back. I know, it's the Jets. They will never trade us Breece Hall, and if they do, it's going to be through the nose, Like, it's going to be an arm and a leg to get this guy because we're trading him in the division. So that's where I asked the question, would the Jets really do that? Even though, yeah, they are winless right now, they have a brand new head coach. They're trying to find their way, and Breece Hall is probably their only good weapon. Him and Garrett Wilson, they don't have a good quarterback to throw to them. So Breece Hall, he would be great. He'd be a perfect fit for us. Absolutely would be a perfect fit. But I just don't see the Jets doing it. Then, of course, you got Alvin Kamara. We just played him. Alvin Kamara does have his great ability. He's been a top running back in this league for a while. I mean, he's been in the league since 2017. He's 30 years old. My question is, how much does he have left in the tank? And also, isn't Travion supposed to be our Alvin Kamara? Isn't he supposed to be the pass-catching back who is supposed to be shifty and be able to use his quickness and his agility and, to make guys miss and get yards after the catch while also being a steady pass blocker? That's what I would do. That's what I would do. I mean, that's kind of what I'm looking at. And then Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry, he's been floated around a couple of times, and the Ravens are on a bye week. They're 1-5 right now. I think it would be a freaking pipe dream to get Derrick Henry. Are you kidding me? There's no way the Ravens are going to let go of him. The Ravens, yeah, they're 1-5 right now. Lamar's supposed to come back next week. And their next 6 opponents are Chicago, Miami, Minnesota, Cleveland, the Jets, and Cincinnati without Joe Burrow. Do you really think that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games where they easily could go 5-1 and might even go 6-0? I'm looking at Minnesota as maybe the only tough game because Brian Flores can scheme against Lamar Jackson. Otherwise, I'm sorry. I would love to have Derrick Henry on this team. I saw a trade, a second-round pick and Ramondre Stevenson. If you're going to trade for Derrick Henry, you're not trading your 2 running backs. You have 2 of them. You're not going to give one of them up. And also, he's 31. And if Derrick Henry were to come here with Ramondre and Travion, guess what? Ramondre, you're second. Hell, you might be even third string. Derrick Henry's the workhorse, obviously. So, that's the only thing. I would love it. I think all of us would love it without a doubt. But it's not going to happen. And just checking some comments here. NJ Flip comes back. Linebacker and safety is the most needed in the defense. Of course. And I would argue more edge than line. If we're talking, what are we talking about? Are we talking about an edge guy, an outside linebacker? Or are we talking about, a true inside, Christian Ellis, Robert Spillane, that type of position? I think we're fine with the inside linebackers. It's the edge rushers that I think we need more. And, yeah, safety, without a doubt. Without a doubt, especially with Jalen Hawkins being hurt. And at Pat's Planet Media just discovered this channel. And then for real, people are crazy thinking Henry would get traded. LOL. Well, thank you, Pat's Planet. I appreciate you finding the channel. Hey, let's go Pats, right? I think you and I would agree. We would love to have Derrick Henry here. It just ain't gonna happen. So I also saw Karen Garigian floated out David Njoku as a possible trade candidate where, with Hunter Henry, Austin Hooper, again, steady pieces. If one of them, God forbid, were to go down, that would be an interesting move to go out and get David Njoku where Harold Fannin is looking more and more like the safety blanket for Cleveland's new quarterback, Dylan Gabriel. I was really surprised when I read that. I was like, really? Because it was something kind of out of the box. Because I'm sitting here thinking running back, defensive back, or edge, right? Those are basic thoughts. And then receiver. I would love to have a legit number 1 guy. But I'm also not complaining with how our receivers have been playing. If anything, I'm actually surprised. Stephon Diggs is looking like the Stephon Diggs of old after his ACL tear. Mac Hollins is a steady guy. Steady number 2, number 3 guy. Kayshon Boutte is playing phenomenal. Pop Douglas He had a down week the week prior, but this week he came out. Like he was very good catching those deep balls, making guys miss, getting into the end zone. You can't beat it. But to see David Njoku as an option, hell, if we could get Njoku for, I would even throw a fifth at them, a fifth, and maybe a depth piece somewhere. I don't see why not. Just bolster up a tight end room. I wouldn't complain, especially at 28 years old, where Austin Hooper is already 31. Hunter Henry's about to be 31. You could set David Njoku up for down the road, a guy you can have for several years. And plus, David Njoku does have familiarity with Mike Vrabel with his time in Cleveland last year. And that's a lot of it, too, is you have Chris Olave, people talked about coming to New England because he played at Ohio State. Mike Vrabel's very good friends with the wide receiver coach, Brian Hartline, who coached Olave at Ohio State. That would be a hell of a grab, right? And then when you talk about the edge rushes, this is another key position of need. Arden Key would be an interesting piece, especially since we're going to see him on Sunday. You have Trey Hendrickson, 30 years old, making $29 million on a one-year deal. If you franchise tag him, that number's going to be through the roof. All right? Unless you have a deal done, but he's going to be wanting a lot of money. And how healthy is he going to be? Is he going to be sustainable? You're also going to be paying through the nose, which means you're going to have, if I know the Patriots and I know their motto, their mold on how to pay guys, that's going to be part of it. Paying them is not their favorite thing to do, especially paying guys so much money at one position. Now, edge is a position that you got to pay out the money for, or out the butt for. But is Trey Hendrickson, who's 30 years old, going to be that guy, and he's going to be healthy in the long run? People float around Cam Jordan, but he's 36. He's going to be an unrestricted free agent. How much more does he have in the tank? I don't know. Jalen Phillips. The two names that intrigued me were Jalen Phillips of the Dolphins and Kayvon Thibodeau of the Giants. Thibodeau is 24. Phillips is 25. Would Miami trade a young Jalen Phillips to New England? That would be a really, really interesting move on their part. And I wonder how much we would have to suffer for that in terms of the cost of what it would be to get him. Jalen Phillips is on his fifth-year option right now, about to be an unrestricted free agent. So again, another guy, 25, he can be here for a long time and solidify your edge, but you're going to be paying a lot of money for it. Yes, we have the cap space now, but how does it look in the next couple of years? On top of cutting guys, restructuring deals, obviously the money's going to change. But that would be an interesting piece. Also, Kayvon Thibodeau, the Giants went after, they got, I know his name, Brian. Man, I hate when this happens. But the Giants got edge rushers of their own, okay? They drafted the kid out of Penn State last year. They got the Carolina, edge rusher. So, but Thibodeau's 24, and in 49 games as a Giant, he's got 23 and a half sacks. He can get home, even on a crappy Giants team. 24, if you can somehow pull him out of there, which would be easier than trading within the division, obviously, but that would be fantastic. That would be another guy you can keep here long term and be successful with him. And then obviously for DB, I mentioned earlier, Roger McCreary. It's trade rumor season's fun. I just want them to do something. And I think they need to do something. I think they're floating around, talking about it, trying to figure out what the move is going to be and what they should be able to do, I think they need to do something. I think this upcoming trade deadline is not a trade deadline where they can be passive and just let it roll by. A couple teams go out and make some moves. We're sitting here at 4-2 right now. I think 100% we can get a guy who can help us out now while also keeping him here for the long term and helping us out in the future. I think that is an absolute real possibility right now. And so with the trade deadline, it's going to be interesting. Definitely interesting to see. Now moving on to the Boston Red Sox. Big news that came out of Fenway was that Alex Bregman has officially opted out of his contract. And now a lot of people, and Bregman has opted out and is going to test free agency. Okay. Him testing free agency is to get a long-term deal because he would, if he opted in this year, it would have been 40. Next year also would have been 40, but then that would have been it. So while he's got 2 years at $40 million guaranteed, he wants a long-term extension at the cost of that $40 million. According to some sources, all signs are pointing to him coming back. All right. It's not hard to see. There are plenty of guys on X who are in the know, who are saying that it's a likelihood that he will be back. If he were to leave, and the thing is, he's also a Scott Boras client. Scott Boras clients are not easy. He will do everything in his power to squeeze teams for as much money as possible. And that's where his client will go. Alex Bregman, if God forbid he were to leave and take the role of the modern day Adrian Beltre. And for those you remember, you remember. Our infield is awful. It is god awful because if Trevor Story, who also has the ability to opt out, decides to stay another year and opt in for his final year, this is what our lineup looks like as of today. You have Marcelo Meyer and Nate Eaton at third. At shortstop, you have Trevor Story and David Hamilton. At second, Nick Sogard and David Hamilton. And at first, you have Romy Gonzalez and Tristan Cassis, who we don't even know if Tristan Cassis is going to play baseball again, let alone be back for the start of the 2026 season. And yes, I left out Nathaniel Lowe because even though he did sign a one-year deal, his status with the Red Sox right now is in limbo. So if he does come back, I think they have to go through arbitration. But regardless of what Nathaniel Lowe's situation is, if he doesn't come back, that is horrendous. And then what's going to happen if Trevor Story decides to opt out? Because he's getting paid relatively on the cheap compared to his position. You have Marcelo Meyer and Nate Eaton at third. Shortstop, David Hamilton and Ceddanne Rafaela as the backup shortstop. Also, Nick Sogard and David Hamilton in second, and Romy Gonzalez, Tristan Cassis at first. I'm worried about our bullpen depth. I'm worried about fielding a solid five-pitcher rotation. All of a sudden, this pops up. Like, holy crap. Bregman's out. If Story opts out, we have nobody in the infield. It is an utter catastrophe what our infield looks like. Basing it on the fact that Bregman has opted out and is not returning. Story will opt out and won't return either. Again, those are all question marks on will they, won't they. But as things currently stand, and yes, the postseason isn't done, free agency isn't open yet, blah, 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 say what you want, I know. But again, if you were to field the roster today with every move that just happened, you can't field out a roster. Because that is not a major league infield by any stretch of the imagination. And so I'm worried. Breslow and John Henry need to go out and spend the money. They need to get active and make moves. Yes, I want Hunter Green. Yes, I want Joe Ryan. Yes, I want Dylan Cease. I want to have everybody out there. Schwarber, Pete Alonso. It would be great. But we need to make sure that we have a freaking middle infield, even a left side of the infield. We need a right side of the infield and a left side of the infield. Ketel Marte, I've heard floated rumors, trading to Boston. I think those are fans doing that, but worth noting. Again, it would be an massive upgrade at second base. But we need that. We need that. Because we get Bregman back, that means we put Meyer at second. Or we put Meyer at short and Story at second. Put Story back to second base. Especially with the amount of errors that Story had this season. That's the crazy thing. And that's why I looked at it and I'm like, holy crap, where... And again, I said this last week, or when talking about going into the Yankee series and looking at the lineup 1 through 9. And even I was like, oh no. That is a bad lineup. Ref Snyder, Romy, Sogard, all those guys. It was not a pretty sight. Not a pretty sight by any stretch of the imagination. So this is going to absolutely be a big offseason for Craig Breslow and for the Boston Red Sox, as it is every offseason. We don't have a first baseman. I like Nathaniel Lowe, but is he going to be the type of guy to, is he going to be good enough here at Fenway for 162 games? And if not, let's go get a big bat. Because we need it. Regardless, we need a big bat. Now we got to move on to talking about the Bruins. The Bruins had a tough loss to the Lightning on Monday. It was not a good one. It was basically classic Bruins fashion. They started the year off 3-0-0. Winning the first 3 games. It felt like the Bruins were playing much better. Swayman was playing much better. And then we go home to play the Lightning. And in the first period, you had Charlie McAvoy being absolutely weak on the puck at the blue line as he's trying to set up the offense. He's clearly not paying attention to the guy behind him who steals the puck and throws it over to get a goal off of Korpisalo, which, again, Korpisalo was in net. And from what I've understood, from what I've learned over the past 2 years with Korpisalo, he's an overpaid backup. Let's put it that way. He's an overpaid backup. But McAvoy, weak on the blue line, trying to set up the offense, gets stripped, goal number 1. Then you have Zadorov, who is behind the red line, behind his left circle, who's looking up, tries to pass it across ice to get out, to set up a breakaway, or set up a 2-on-1, or an odd man rush, basically. But he throws it right to Jake Gensel, 20 feet from Korpisalo, or 15 feet from Korpisalo. And then a couple moves here and there, a couple passes, bam. Cirelli finds the back of the net again to go up 2-0. And then, when the Lightning went up 3-0, the Bruins had the puck. They were going up the right boards, and the puck just hit a little bit too hard, gets out of the reach from Andrew Peeke. Lightning keep it in the offensive zone for themselves, and next thing you know, they can't capitalize, and it's 3-0 Tampa. I understand Korpisalo's in net, and like I said, he's an overpaid backup. I totally get it. Korpisalo is also good enough to when the defense plays and plays good, he can be pretty good himself. But when you have McAvoy, Zadorov, Peeke, misplaying the puck, doing things that are big-ass no-nos, like Zadorov passing across ice in your own zone, obviously gets intercepted. Obviously, Tampa capitalizes on it. What do you expect? This team is supposed to be built on its defense. Peeke, Zadorov, McAvoy, Lindholm, who I know is currently out. It's not. I think he's going to be coming back. They play, obviously, tonight. I don't think he's playing tonight, but he made the trip with them. And Mason Lohrei, you have a solid enough core on defense where situations like this should not be happening. A lot of this is just brain farts. You're not thinking. You're not acting right. In what world do you think that was a smart move? I understand you see the guy up by center ice, but you also have to know where you are and where everyone else is around you, right? Isn't that part of your job? If we play the exact same way like we played last year, and listen, Swayman was bad himself. I am not trying to remove anything from Swayman, or any blame from Swayman, because I, crushed him last year. But his defense did not help him by any stretch of the imagination. It's not like the defense was a top 5 deep core, and yet it was Swayman letting in all these leaky goals, which he was, by the way. It's just that the defense was not a top 5 D. We all know that the Bruins are not offensively gifted by any stretch of the imagination. Yes, we have David Pastrnak, and Elias Lindholm's supposed to be a very good two-way player. But what? Victor Arvidsson? He's supposed to be our guy? Our other offensive machine? Yeah, no. That's, again, if he's supposed to be the second guy behind Pastrnak in terms of creating offense, as good as Arvidsson is, that's not a good team right there. We need more. That's why this team is built from the defense, because we can't generate our own offense. We were 29th in the NHL last year in power play percentage. Power play. We're trying to change that. But it's not looking good. We were 0 for 5. 0 for 5 on Monday. And after the first 2 games of the season, we've been 0 for 9. Our power play is at a 12.5% right now. The defense needs to get their act together. If they keep playing like that, if Charlie McAvoy keeps playing like that, if Zadorov keeps playing like that, it's going to be a very long season again. And you know what? Maybe it'll be a good thing, because apparently there's a kid in the draft who is this absolute stud, and to get him at number 1 overall might be great. But I'm not talking about tanking, especially 4 games into the season. I'm not looking to blow my gasket because it's 4 games in. The Bruins are 3-1. You had a tough loss. You made a comeback. I'll give you credit. You made the comeback against Tampa. But their defensive turnovers are nothing new. That was a massive problem last year. Setting up odd man rushes for the opposing team for Swayman to face, for Korpisalo to face. Obviously, you're going to lose when that happens. So it's going to be interesting to see how the Bruins do on this road trip, especially after them acting like the team of last year on Monday. They were at least able to make somewhat of a comeback, make it a 4-3 game, respectable game, but it wasn't enough. Obviously, it wasn't enough. Their mistakes lost them the game on Monday, without a doubt. Without a doubt. And so to wrap things up, we're going to talk a little bit of Celtics because they finished up their preseason going 3-1. We have to wait an entire week because they play, or 6 days now, but wait until Wednesday before they play the Sixers. And we all know that Jason Tatum's going to be out until February, March, or April. In my opinion, preferably April. We don't want, his Achilles to rupture again. Like, we don't want anything bad to happen. So give him more time to heal. That's the way I look at it. But news coming out of the game last night, or the other night, was the fact that Jaylen Brown, it was last night, yeah. News coming out of the game last night. Jaylen Brown grabs his hamstring with 5 minutes remaining in the first quarter. And he doesn't show up for the rest of the game. If he's out for a considerable amount of time, or if he's fighting a hamstring injury this whole season, it's going to be another long season. It really is. And that's going to suck. Not being able to have Tatum, and then, God forbid, Jaylen Brown is dealing with a hamstring issue all season. If anything, this is Jaylen Brown's time to shine. If he wants to go out and show that he can be the number 1, then he needs to be on the court. He needs to be healthy first and foremost. But he needs to be out on the court and prove that he can go out and win. And by winning, that means the Celtics have to win a decent amount of games. The funny part is, the BetMGM odds have the Boston Celtics at 40.5 wins. 40.5 wins. Yeah. That's the over-under win totals. That means if the Celtics go 500, you win your bet, courtesy of BetMGM there. I don't know about you, but do you think that this is a 500 club? Do you really think that the Celtics are a 500 club off, out of 15 teams in the East? Can they win 41 games with Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and the rest of that squad? Yes, they can. Absolutely they can. As you can see on the ticker below, smash the over. Smash the over. That is, oh my gosh, that, like, if there's an easier bet in the world, it is that one. If you can get 40.5, Holy cow. Throw everything you got at that. Really? A healthy Jaylen Brown, for the season? And then if you're in the hunt, if you're right in the middle tier, 3, 4, 5, 6, right in the standings, you're going to get Jason Tatum back. You're going to get him back no later than friggin' March, end of March. Why not? Smash the damn over. Like, hello, McFly, what are we talking about? 40 and a half? Holy cow. I saw that and nearly fell out of my chair. What a joke that was. So, hey, at least we can end on a high note. At least I can win you some money, right? That's the whole point of this. Not really. But the whole point of this is talk Boston sports, have fun. That's what the show's all about. And just to tell it like it is. So, with the Celtics, 40 and a half. They're a much better team than friggin' 500. I can tell you that. So, I want to thank you guys for sticking around, tuning in. Shout out to all the new followers, new subscribers. And if you haven't already, comment down below, like, share, subscribe. Let all your friends know. Let everybody know if you took something away from it. Tell them about it. Tell them about this show. Have them tune in. It'd be really appreciative. And, I just want to thank you guys. I couldn't do it without you. So, once again, thank you again. For the Boston Sports Summit, I am your host, Tim Barnard. We are presented by the Grid Network, which has a whole host of great shows. Don't forget to follow on my Instagram, X, YouTube, and then obviously the Grid Network, which again has a whole host of great shows, great content creators over there. So give them a follow as well. Thank you so much, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your week and a great weekend. God bless. Thank you.